The war in Ukraine is not only a humanitarian and security crisis, but also a climate crisis. The conflict has exposed the global dependence on fossil fuels, especially Russian oil and gas, and how this threatens the climate goals of reducing carbon emissions. Russia is one of the world's largest exporters of fossil fuels, and its economy relies heavily on the revenues from selling oil and gas to other countries. Many of these countries are in Europe, which gets about 40% of its gas and 30% of its oil from Russia. Ukraine is a key transit country for Russian gas pipelines to Europe, and has also been dependent on Russian gas for its own domestic needs. The invasion of Ukraine by Russia has disrupted the energy supply and security of Europe and Ukraine, and has caused a surge in the prices of fossil fuels. Coal, oil and gas prices have reached record highs as countries scramble to replace Russian sources or stockpile reserves. This has also increased the demand for fossil fuels from other regions, such as the Middle East, Africa and North America. The rush to use more fossil fuels because of the war in Ukraine is madness and threatens global climate targets, according to the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. He said that this would only worsen the climate crisis and make the world more vulnerable to disasters caused by global heating. The latest report by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, found that about half of the world's population is now acutely vulnerable to disasters stemming from the burning of fossil fuels. The IPCC report also warned that the world needs to cut its carbon emissions by 45% by 2030 and reach net zero by 2050 to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. This is the threshold that scientists say is necessary to avoid the most catastrophic impacts of climate change, such as more severe heatwaves, droughts, floods, storms, wildfires, sea level rise and biodiversity loss. However, the current pledges by countries to reduce their emissions are far from enough to meet this goal. The UN estimates that the world is on track to warm by 2.7 degrees Celsius by the end of the century, even if all the pledges are fulfilled. This would have devastating consequences for people and nature around the world. The war in Ukraine also shows how fossil fuels are a source of conflict and instability in the world.